They pushed my chair back and said it out loud so everyone could hear. That seat was for her ex. I stood there while her son laughed, while the family stared, while Helena nodded like it was normal. I didn't argue. I didn't leave. I memorized who was watching. The dining room at Helena's mother's house had always intimidated people. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen fireworks above the mahogany table that could seat 20. Tonight, it seated 15 family members, plus me, or rather, it was supposed to seat me. The smell of roasted turkey and expensive wine filled the air, mixing with the perfume of women who spent more on their handbags than most people made in a month. I'm Tanner Jossman, and I've been married to Helena for 3 years. I run a cybersecurity consulting firm that I built from nothing, starting in my garage after getting laid off from a tech company that thought 42 was too old for innovation. Helena Jossman is a lawyer at Morrison, Klein & Associates, where she specializes in corporate litigation and makes twice what I do. Her son, Keaton, is 19 and treats me like a temporary inconvenience in his mother's life. Tonight, that treatment became public. "Tanner, that's Rhett's chair," Keaton announced, his voice carrying across the table like a dinner bell. "My real dad always sits there during Christmas." Rhett Vossen, Helena's ex-husband, Keaton's biological father, and the man who'd been invited to Christmas dinner at my wife's family gathering. He owned a classic car dealership downtown and wore his success like cologne, too much and too obvious. His silver hair was perfectly styled, his smile was practiced, and his handshake felt like a business transaction. I looked at Helena, expecting her to correct her son. Instead, she avoided my eyes and adjusted her pearl necklace. "Maybe you could sit over there, Tanner," she said quietly, gesturing toward a chair at the far end of the table, near where the teenagers usually sat. The room went silent except for the soft, classical music playing from hidden speakers. Gloria Marin, Helena's mother and the family matriarch, watched with the expression of someone observing a mildly interesting social experiment. Lana Firth, Helena's best friend and law firm colleague, covered her mouth but couldn't hide the amusement in her eyes. "This is awkward," someone whispered. "Poor guy," another voice murmured, though it didn't sound particularly sympathetic. I remained standing behind the chair I'd occupied for 3 previous Christmas dinners. My chair, the chair where Helena's husband was supposed to sit. Rhett approached from the kitchen, carrying a glass of wine and wearing a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. "Hey, Tanner," Rhett said with false friendliness. "Thanks for keeping my spot warm." Keaton laughed, a sharp, cruel sound that cut through the holiday atmosphere. "Yeah, stepdad, musical chairs is over." I felt every eye in the room watching me. Helena's cousins, her aunts and uncles, family friends who'd known the Marins for decades. They were waiting to see how the middle-class tech guy would handle being publicly displaced by the wealthy ex-husband. That's when I made my first move. Instead of arguing or storming out, I pulled my phone from my pocket and sat down in the disputed chair. Under the table, where nobody could see the screen, I opened my secure email app and began typing. 3 messages, each one carefully composed months ago and saved in my drafts folder, just waiting for the right moment. The first email went to my business attorney, authorizing the immediate transfer of certain assets back to my personal accounts. The second went to my bank, canceling a wire transfer that Helena had requested for her son's spring semester tuition. The third went to my property management company, implementing changes to our home's smart security system. "Tanner?" Helena's voice sounded strained. "Could you please move?" I looked up from my phone, smiled, and stood. "Of course. Merry Christmas, everyone." But I wasn't finished. While Rhett settled into what he clearly considered his rightful place, I opened one more app, the automated document system I'd designed for my business clients. With a few taps, I scheduled a comprehensive file release for midnight December 26th, legal documents, financial records, and communication logs that would change everything. "Thank you," Helena said as I moved to the end of the table. I sat down next to Helena's teenage nephew, who was more interested in his phone than the family drama. From this angle, I could see the entire table clearly. Rhett was already dominating the conversation, talking about his recent acquisition of a 1967 Mustang. Keaton hung on every word like his father was describing buried treasure. Helena laughed at Rhett's stories with the same musical sound she'd once reserved for me. She touched his arm when he made jokes, leaned in when he spoke softly, and generally acted like a woman who was remembering why she'd married him in the first place. I ate my dinner and said nothing. When Gloria asked about my business, I gave polite, brief answers. When Lana inquired about our holiday plans, I deferred to Helena. I was the picture of a gracious, defeated husband who knew his place, but inside, I was calculating. Helena didn't know that the house we lived in was titled in a trust I'd established before our marriage. She didn't know that the business accounts she occasionally accessed were subsidiary accounts with limited funds. She didn't know that every conversation in our home for the past 6 months had been recorded by the security system she thought was just for burglars. Most importantly, she didn't know that I'd been planning for this moment since the first time Keaton had jokingly suggested that his parents should get back together. After dinner, while the family gathered in the living room for gift exchanges, I stepped outside onto the front porch. The December air was sharp and clean, a relief after the suffocating atmosphere inside. Rhett's car was parked in the circular driveway, a pristine black BMW that he'd positioned prominently in front of the house. I walked over to examine it, admiring the paint job and the custom wheels. Then I took out my keys and carved a thin line along the passenger side door. Not deep enough to reach the metal, just enough to scratch the clear coat. I punctured the front tire with my house key, letting the air hiss out slowly. Finally, I tucked a business card under the windshield wiper with a handwritten note. Next time, bring your own seat. The porch light illuminated my work clearly, and I noticed the small security camera mounted under the eaves of the house. I waved at it and walked back inside. The gift exchange was already underway. Helena had given Rhett an expensive watch. Apparently, being divorced didn't exclude him from Christmas presents. Keaton received a new laptop from his father and barely acknowledged the gift card I'd contributed. "This is nice," Rhett said, examining the watch. "You always had good taste, Helena." "Some things don't change," she replied, and the meaning hung in the air like smoke. I received a sweater from Helena's mother and a bottle of wine from Lana. Helena gave me a book about entrepreneurship that I was certain she'd grabbed from the business section of a bookstore that morning. When it was my turn to give gifts, I handed out the presents I'd carefully selected weeks ago, before I knew I'd be sitting at the children's end of the table. For Helena, I'd bought a beautiful necklace that complemented her professional wardrobe. For Keaton, a high-end gaming headset he'd mentioned wanting. For Helena's mother, an expensive bottle of her favorite perfume. Each gift was thoughtful, generous, and calculated to demonstrate exactly what they would be losing. "Thank you, Tanner," Helena said, fastening the necklace. "It's beautiful." "You're welcome," I replied. I wanted this Christmas to be memorable. By 10 o'clock, the evening was winding down. Rhett was staying at a hotel downtown, but he and Helena were making plans for breakfast the next morning. Keaton was going to join them naturally. I wasn't invited. "I should get going," Rhett announced, standing and stretching. "Early day tomorrow." "I'll walk you out," Helena offered. They went outside together, followed by Keaton. I remained in the living room, helping Gloria collect wrapping paper and making small talk with the remaining family members. Through the front windows, I could see the three of them standing beside Rhett's damaged car. Helena's voice carried through the glass. "What happened?" "Some punk kid, probably," Rhett said, examining the scratch and the flat tire. "This neighborhood's going downhill." Keaton found my business card and read it aloud. "Next time, bring your own seat." He looked toward the house. "That's seriously messed up." It's just property damage, Helena said, but her voice was tight with anger. We'll deal with it tomorrow. I continued cleaning up, acting as if I couldn't hear them. When Helena came back inside, her face was flushed with cold and embarrassment. Ready to go home? She asked me. Whenever you are, I said pleasantly. We said our goodbyes and drove home in silence. Our house was a modest colonial in a quiet neighborhood, nothing like the Marin family estate, but comfortable and well-maintained. Helena went straight to the bedroom to change clothes. I went to my home office and checked my computer. Everything was ready. The midnight release was queued and locked. The asset transfers were pending. The security system modifications were scheduled. In 6 hours and 17 minutes, Helena's world would begin to collapse. I poured myself a glass of whiskey and sat in my leather chair, looking out the window at our snow-covered yard. Tomorrow would be interesting. At 11:47 p.m., I heard Helena talking on the phone in the bedroom. Her voice was animated, happy in a way I hadn't heard in months. She was talking to Rhett, planning their breakfast, discussing how well the evening had gone. Tanner was actually pretty gracious about it, she said. I think he finally understands his place in the family. I smiled and checked my watch. 13 minutes. At exactly midnight, my automated systems activated. Account transfers executed. Security protocols engaged. Document releases initiated. Legal notifications sent. The process took less than 30 seconds to complete 3 months of preparation. My phone buzzed with confirmation messages. Everything had worked perfectly. In the bedroom, Helena's phone rang. Then it rang again, and again. What's wrong? I heard her say. What do you mean frozen? That's impossible. I finished my whiskey and went to bed. I woke up at 6 a.m. to the sound of Helena screaming into her phone. She was in the kitchen, still wearing her pajamas, with her laptop open and papers scattered across the counter. Her hair was disheveled, her face was pale, and her hands were shaking. This has to be a mistake, she was saying. Run it again. Check the backup systems. I don't care what the computer says, there has to be money in that account. I made coffee and toast like it was any other morning. Helena didn't acknowledge me. She was too busy discovering that the comfortable life she'd taken for granted had evaporated overnight. Tanner, she finally said, hanging up the phone. Something's wrong with our accounts. The bank says they're frozen, but that's impossible. We have automatic transfers, direct deposits, everything should be working normally. That sounds frustrating, I said, buttering my toast. Have you tried calling customer service? I've been calling customer service for an hour, she snapped. They keep saying the accounts have been restructured according to the original trust documents. What trust documents? You never mentioned any trust documents. I sipped my coffee and looked at her with what I hoped was appropriate concern. Oh, those trust documents. I set up a family trust before we got married. Standard asset protection stuff. My attorney insisted on it after my first business got sued. I thought I mentioned it. You never mentioned it, Helena said coldly. And why would that affect our accounts now? I have no idea, I lied smoothly. Maybe there was some kind of automatic review trigger. You know how banks are about compliance these days. I'm sure we can sort it out after the holidays. Helena's phone rang again. This time it was Keaton calling from his dorm room. Mom, my tuition payment got rejected. His voice was loud enough for me to hear. The bursar's office says the wire transfer was canceled. What's going on? Helena looked at me with growing suspicion. I don't know, honey. We're having some banking issues. I'll figure it out and call you back. This is seriously messed up, Mom. Registration for spring classes is next week. If my tuition isn't paid, I'll lose my spot in the program. I said I'll figure it out, Helena repeated, her voice strained. After she hung up, she stared at me across the kitchen counter. This is quite a coincidence, Tanner. All our financial problems starting the morning after last night. What are you suggesting? I asked innocently. I'm suggesting that you're angry about the seating arrangement and you're taking it out on the family finances. I laughed, a genuine sound of amusement. Helena, I run a cybersecurity company, not a bank. I can't just freeze accounts because my feelings got hurt. Besides, if I had that kind of power, don't you think I would have used it before now? She wanted to argue, but she couldn't prove anything. The trust documents were legitimate, filed years before our marriage. The account restructuring was automatic, triggered by clauses I'd included specifically for this situation. Everything was legal, documented, and unassailable. I need to call my attorney, Helena said. Good idea, I agreed. Maybe he can expedite the review process. While Helena made her calls, I went to my home gym in the basement. I'd installed a heavy bag, a speed bag, and a weight bench down there. My refuge when work stress got overwhelming. This morning, I wasn't stressed. I was energized. I spent an hour working out, pushing myself harder than usual. When I came back upstairs, Helena was dressed and gathering her purse and keys. Where are you going? I asked. To meet Rhett and Keaton for breakfast. Then we're going to the bank to sort this out. On December 26th? Most banks are closed today. Helena's face flushed with frustration. Then we'll go tomorrow, or the next day, however long it takes. Sounds like a plan, I said cheerfully. Tell them I said hello. After she left, I returned to my office and began phase 2 of my operation. Helena had made one critical mistake in her rush to freeze me out of the family. She'd underestimated my understanding of her world. I opened my laptop and accessed the social media monitoring software I'd originally developed for corporate clients who wanted to track their online reputation. With a few modifications, it became an excellent tool for gathering intelligence on individuals. Helena's Instagram account was public, despite my previous suggestions that she increase her privacy settings. Her most recent post was a photo from last night's dinner, showing her laughing with Rhett while Keaton grinned beside them. The caption read, "Some traditions never change. Family is everything." Christmas joy. Blessed. I wasn't in the photo naturally, but the comments were illuminating. "You two look great together," wrote one of Helena's college friends. "Keaton looks so happy to have his dad back in the picture," added another. "What about your husband?" asked a third commenter. "Some people just don't understand family dynamics," Helena had replied. I screenshotted everything, then moved on to Keaton's TikTok account. His latest video was titled "Stepdad Drama at Christmas Dinner" and showed him reenacting the chair incident for his followers. He'd used a dining room chair as a prop and was dramatically gesturing while explaining how cringe it was when his stepdad tried to sit in his real dad's seat. The video had already received several hundred likes and dozens of comments, most of them mocking me as a beta male or a simp who couldn't stand up to his wife. Keaton was eating up the attention, responding to comments and promising a follow-up video about the car vandalism. I saved the video to my hard drive, then did something that would have made my corporate clients very nervous. I used my administrative access to Helena's phone plan to retrieve her text messages from the past week. The messages between Helena and Rhett were enlightening. They'd been planning his appearance at Christmas dinner for 2 weeks, discussing how to handle Tanner and minimize any awkwardness. Helena had specifically told Rhett to act natural and let Keaton take the lead on the seating situation. "He's not confrontational," she'd texted. "He'll just go along with it to avoid a scene." "What if he makes trouble?" Rhett had replied. "He won't. He's too worried about his reputation with my family. Besides, what's he going to do? He needs me more than I need him." That message had been sent yesterday morning while I was wrapping Christmas presents. The most recent exchange had happened around 1 a.m. after Helena discovered the account problems. "Helena, something's wrong with our money. Account's frozen. Can't access anything." "Rhett, how is that possible? I thought you said he was just a tech guy." Helena, "He is. This has to be a coincidence. Banks do weird stuff during holidays." Rhett, "Maybe. But if he's trying to control you financially, we need to document it. That's abuse." Helena, "Let's not jump to conclusions. I'll figure it out." Rhett, "I'm here if you need help. Keaton, too. We're a family." Helena, "I know, thank you. For everything." I forwarded the entire conversation to an encrypted email account I'd set up for evidence storage. Then I did something that would escalate the situation considerably. I used Helena's social media accounts to post updates about our financial difficulties. The Facebook post was subtle, learning that trust and transparency are so important in relationships. Some surprises aren't pleasant ones, feeling grateful for family who really understand me. The Instagram story was more direct. A photo of our kitchen with the caption, "When your husband controls the money but doesn't control the relationship." Both posts would be seen by Helena's professional contacts, family members, and social circle. They painted me as a controlling, manipulative husband while positioning her as the victim of financial abuse. Of course, Helena hadn't actually posted them, but proving that would require a level of technical investigation that most people wouldn't pursue. By the time she noticed and deleted the posts, they would have been screenshotted and shared. My phone buzzed with a text from Jude Krantz, my best friend and the owner of the boxing gym where I worked out twice a week. Jude was a former bouncer who'd opened his gym in a converted warehouse downtown. He was also one of the few people who knew the real state of my marriage. Saw Helena's post. "You okay, man?" I called him back immediately. "I'm fine," I said. "Better than fine, actually." "What the hell is going on? She's making it sound like you're some kind of financial abuser." "It's complicated, Jude, but I've got it handled." "You sure? Because this sounds like the kind of situation where you need backup." Jude had been offering to handle Helena for months, ever since I'd told him about Keaton's disrespect and Helena's increasing coldness. His solutions tended to involve physical intimidation, which wasn't my style. "I don't need backup," I assured him, "but I might need an alibi later." "For what?" "Nothing illegal, just thorough." Jude laughed. "You're starting to sound like the old Tanner, the guy who built a business from nothing and didn't take garbage from anybody." "That guy never left," I said. "He was just being patient." After we hung up, I spent the rest of the morning implementing the next phase of my plan. Using publicly available information and my professional contacts, I began researching Rhett's business operations. Vossen Classic Cars had been struggling for the past 2 years, according to the financial reports filed with the state. Rhett's flashy lifestyle was supported by a combination of business loans, personal credit, and what appeared to be some creative accounting practices. His insurance claims showed an unusually high number of customer accidents and vandalism incidents that had resulted in substantial payouts. More interesting was his recent application for a city permit to expand his showroom. The application required a background check, financial disclosure, and references from other business owners. I happened to know several members of the City Planning Commission from my work with local government cybersecurity contracts. I made a few phone calls. "Hey Tom, it's Tanner Jossman. I hope you had a good Christmas. Listen, I wanted to give you a heads up about a permit application you might be reviewing. Vossen Classic Cars. Yeah, that's the one. I can't go into details, but you might want to take a closer look at their insurance claims history and their customer complaint record with the Better Business Bureau. No, nothing criminal, just some patterns that might be relevant to your decision." "Okay, thanks. Happy holidays." Similar calls went to the city inspector's office, the business licensing department, and the Chamber of Commerce. I wasn't making accusations or providing false information. I was simply directing attention to public records that painted an unflattering picture of Rhett's business practices. By noon, I'd planted seeds that would sprout into serious problems for Rhett over the next few weeks. Permit delays, inspection requests, customer complaint investigations, and insurance audits. Nothing that would destroy his business immediately, but enough bureaucratic pressure to make his life significantly more complicated. Helena returned home around 2 p.m. looking frustrated and tired. Keaton was with her, carrying a duffel bag that suggested he'd be staying with us for a few days. "Any luck with the bank?" I asked. "They're closed until tomorrow," Helena said curtly. "But I spoke with my attorney. He says what you've done might constitute financial coercion." What I've done? I repeated, genuinely puzzled. Helena, I haven't done anything except wake up this morning. If there's a problem with the trust structure, we can review it with both our attorneys present. Cut the innocent act, Tanner, Keaton interjected. We know you're behind this. I looked at the 19-year-old who'd humiliated me in front of his entire extended family. Behind what, exactly? A banking error? Administrative delays during a holiday weekend? Keaton, I understand you're frustrated about your tuition, but I'm not responsible for every inconvenience in your life. You vandalized my dad's car, he said accusingly. Did I? That's a serious allegation. Do you have any proof? Helena pulled out her phone and showed me a photo of the scratched BMW in the business card. This is your card, Tanner. So it is, I agreed. Someone must have taken it from my wallet or my office. I give those cards out all the time. Helena, you know I would never damage someone's property. That's not who I am. It wasn't technically a lie. The Tanner Jossman who'd married Helena 3 years ago wouldn't have keyed a car or punctured a tire. But that man had been naive enough to believe that kindness and respect were reciprocal. This Tanner Jossman had learned better. The security camera caught you, Keaton said triumphantly. Then I'm sure the police will want to review that footage, I replied calmly. They'll also want to interview witnesses, check fingerprints on the card, and examine my whereabouts during the time in question. Are you prepared for that level of scrutiny, Keaton? The young man's confidence wavered. He'd been expecting me to confess, or at least show guilt. Instead, I was calling his bluff with the confidence of someone who had nothing to hide. Maybe we should all take a step back, Helena said, sensing that the confrontation wasn't going as planned. Tanner, regardless of who damaged Rhett's car, your behavior last night was inappropriate. The social media posts, the financial games, all of it needs to stop. What social media posts? I asked. Helena showed me her phone again, displaying the Facebook and Instagram updates I'd made using her accounts. These posts, Tanner. Don't pretend you don't know about them. I read them carefully, frowning with apparent confusion. Helena, I didn't write these. And why would I use your accounts to complain about myself? That doesn't make any sense. Then how do you explain them? I can't explain them. Maybe your accounts were hacked. It happens all the time, especially to people who use weak passwords or connect to unsecured networks. Have you been using public Wi-Fi lately? Hotel networks? Coffee shop connections? Helena's face went pale. She'd been using the Wi-Fi at Rhett's hotel that morning. This is ridiculous, Keaton said. You're obviously lying. I turned to face him directly. Keaton, I've been patient with your disrespect because you're Helena's son, but I'm not going to stand here and be accused of crimes by someone who posts TikTok videos mocking his family. Maybe you should focus on your own behavior before criticizing mine. What TikTok videos? Helena asked. I pulled out my phone and showed her Keaton's stepdad drama video, which now had over 1,000 likes. Helena watched in horror as her son reenacted the previous night's humiliation for the entertainment of his social media followers. Keaton, she gasped, how could you post something like this? It's just a funny story, Mom. Everyone thought it was hilarious. It's not hilarious, it's humiliating for all of us. Take it down immediately. But it's getting great engagement. Take it down now. While Keaton reluctantly deleted his video, I excused myself to check the mail. Among the usual holiday cards and advertisements was a thick envelope from my attorney's office. Inside were copies of the trust documents, account statements, and a letter explaining the automatic restructuring that had occurred at midnight. I brought the papers inside and handed them to Helena. This might explain the banking situation, I said helpfully. Helena read through the documents, her expression growing more frustrated with each page. Everything was legal, properly filed, and clearly documented. The trust had been established before our marriage, as I'd claimed. The restructuring was automatic, triggered by specific conditions that had been met on Christmas Day. What conditions? She asked. I pointed to a paragraph buried in the middle of page 7. Spousal financial infidelity, or evidence of marital discord that threatens the security of trust assets. That's completely subjective, Helena protested. That's why there's an appeals process, I said reasonably. We can request a review with independent arbitrators. It usually takes 6 to 8 weeks. 6 to 8 weeks? Keaton yelped. I need my tuition paid next week. Maybe your father can help with that, I suggested. He seemed very concerned about your welfare last night. Helena and Keaton exchanged glances. They both knew that Rhett's financial situation wasn't as solid as his expensive clothes and flashy car suggested. This is temporary, Helena said firmly. Whatever game you're playing, Tanner, it's going to backfire. I have resources you don't know about. I'm not playing any games, I replied, but I'm glad you have resources. You might need them. That evening, Helena spent hours on the phone with attorneys, accountants, and family members, trying to find a way around the trust restrictions. Keaton called his father repeatedly, begging for tuition money that Rhett couldn't provide without seriously damaging his own financial position. I made dinner for myself and ate alone while they strategized in the living room. Their voices carried through the house, angry, desperate, and increasingly panicked as they realized how completely I'd outmaneuvered them. Around 10 p.m., my phone rang. The caller ID showed Rhett's number. Tanner, we need to talk, he said without preamble. Hello, Rhett. How's your car? Cut the garbage. I know you damaged my car, and I know you're behind Helena's financial problems. What's it going to take to make this stop? I'm not sure what you mean, I said pleasantly. But if you're having financial difficulties, maybe you should reconsider some of your recent expenses. Classic cars can be very costly to maintain. Are you threatening me? I'm offering friendly advice, from one businessman to another. Rhett was quiet for a moment. Helena says you're not usually this vindictive. Helena says a lot of things, but she doesn't know me as well as she thinks she does. What do you want, Tanner? I want exactly what I had 24 hours ago. Respect in my own home, acknowledgement of my place in my wife's life, and basic human courtesy from her family. Unfortunately, that seems to be too much to ask. So this is about the chair thing? Seriously? This is about the chair thing, the social media mockery, the financial planning behind my back, and the general assumption that I'm too weak or too stupid to defend myself. You all made a mistake, Rhett. You confused patience with weakness. And now what? You're going to destroy Helena's life because your feelings got hurt. I'm not destroying anything. I'm simply allowing natural consequences to occur. Helena made choices. You made choices. Keaton made choices. Now you all get to live with the results. This isn't over, Rhett warned. No, I agreed. It's just getting started. After I hung up, I went to my office and began preparing for Phase 3. Helena and her allies had underestimated me once. I wasn't going to give them the chance to do it again. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, and new ways to demonstrate that the quiet tech guy they'd dismissed was far more dangerous than they'd imagined. I poured myself another whiskey and smiled. The Christmas table might have been set for 15 people, but only one of us had been planning for this moment all along. The next morning brought Helena's counterattack, and it was more sophisticated than I'd expected. She'd spent the night consulting with her law firm colleagues and had developed a strategy that would have been effective against a normal husband. Unfortunately for her, I wasn't normal anymore. I woke up to find her in the kitchen with Lana Firth, both women dressed in their professional attire, despite the fact that most businesses were still closed for the holiday week. They had laptops, legal documents, and the kind of determined expressions that meant trouble. Good morning, ladies, I said, pouring myself coffee. Working during the holidays? Emergency consultation, Lana replied coolly. Helena's situation requires immediate attention. Lana Firth was Helena's best friend from law school and her closest colleague at Morrison, Klein & Associates. She was also divorced, bitter about men in general, and had never liked me. She'd probably been waiting years for an opportunity to help Helena escape her marriage to a beneath-her-station tech worker. "What kind of emergency?" I asked innocently. Helena slid a document across the counter. "Restraining order application, based on financial abuse, property destruction, and cyberstalking." I read through the application carefully. It was well crafted, citing specific incidents, and using language that would be compelling to a family court judge. The vandalism of Rhett's car, the social media posts made from Helena's accounts, the sudden freezing of family finances, all presented as part of a pattern of escalating abuse. "This is very thorough," I said admiringly. "Lana, you did excellent work here. The timeline is convincing, the legal citations are appropriate, and the requested remedies are reasonable." Both women looked surprised by my calm reaction. "You're not going to fight it?" Helena asked. "Oh, I'm definitely going to fight it," I said cheerfully. "But I wanted to acknowledge the quality of the work first. It's always impressive when professionals bring their best effort to a project." I pulled out my phone and made a call. "Maggie, it's Tanner. I need a favor." "Yes, I know it's early. I know it's the holidays. But Helena just served me with a restraining order application, and I need representation." "No, I didn't hit her. No, I'm not threatening her. It's complicated. Can you meet me at your office in an hour?" "Great. Thanks, sis." Helena's face went white. "Your sister is representing you?" "Maggie Jossman is one of the best family law attorneys in the state," I said proudly. "She specializes in defending men against false abuse allegations. Ironically, she got into that field after watching our father get destroyed by our mother's divorce attorney 20 years ago." Lana looked concerned. "I thought your sister worked in legal aid." "She does, but she also maintains a private practice for special cases involving professional women who abuse the legal system to punish their husbands for not being sufficiently submissive." I finished my coffee and headed toward the door. "I'll be back later to collect some clothes. Maggie says I should stay elsewhere until the hearing, just to avoid any appearance of impropriety." "Where are you going to stay?" Helena asked. "Don't worry about it. I'm sure Rhett will take good care of you while I'm gone." I drove to Maggie's office in downtown, passing Rhett's classic car dealership on the way. There was a city inspector's van parked outside, and I could see Rhett gesturing angrily while a uniformed official took notes. My phone calls from yesterday were already bearing fruit. Maggie Jossman was 2 years older than me and had inherited our father's stubborn streak, along with our mother's sharp intelligence. She'd built her legal aid practice into one of the most respected family law firms in the region, specializing in cases where the traditional power dynamics were reversed. "Let me see the application," she said without preamble. I handed over Helena's restraining order paperwork and watched my sister's expression grow more amused with each page. "Financial abuse?" she laughed. "Tanner, you established that trust 3 years ago. It's been properly maintained and documented the entire time. Any competent attorney would have discovered it during basic due diligence." "Helena's attorney isn't incompetent," I said. "She's desperate. There's a difference." "Tell me about the car vandalism." I described Christmas night in detail, including my careful positioning relative to the security camera and my decision to wave at it before going back inside. "So you deliberately made sure you were recorded?" "I wanted there to be evidence of my location and behavior. Someone who was trying to hide their actions wouldn't wave at a security camera." Maggie grinned. "You're more devious than I gave you credit for. What about the social media posts?" Helena's accounts were compromised, probably through unsecured hotel Wi-Fi. I've documented several similar incidents in my cybersecurity work. It's a common attack vector. "Can you prove that?" "I can demonstrate that it's possible and provide expert testimony about the vulnerability of her devices. I can't prove that it happened, but they can't prove that it didn't." "And the financial restructuring?" "Automatic, based on clearly defined triggers in the trust documents. Everything was legal and properly executed." Maggie leaned back in her chair. "Tanner, This is the weakest restraining order application I've seen in years. Any judge who's been on the bench for more than 6 months will throw it out immediately. That's what I was hoping you'd say. But I'm curious about something. Why are you doing this? 3 years ago, you were head over heels in love with Helena. You talked about her like she was the perfect woman. I was quiet for a moment, thinking about how to explain the transformation that had occurred over the past year. She was never the perfect woman, I said finally. She was just very good at pretending to be someone she wasn't. The real Helena is ambitious, manipulative, and fundamentally selfish. She married me because I was stable and successful, not because she loved me. And you're punishing her for that? I'm protecting myself from that. There's a difference. Maggie studied my face. You've changed, Tanner. You're harder now, more calculating. I learned from the best. Helena taught me that nice guys don't finish last. They get humiliated at Christmas dinner while their wife's ex-husband takes their seat at the table. Fair enough. But be careful you don't become something you'll regret being. I'm not becoming anything, Maggie. I'm just stopping pretending to be something I'm not. We spent the next hour preparing my response to Helena's restraining order application. Maggie would file a counter motion citing harassment and abuse of process, along with a request for sanctions against Helena's attorney for filing a frivolous claim. This should be interesting, Maggie said as I prepared to leave. Helena's not going to expect this level of pushback. Helena's not going to expect a lot of things. I drove to Jude's gym, where I'd arranged to stay in the small apartment above the training floor. Jude rented it out to fighters who were preparing for big matches and needed a place to focus without distractions. You look like a man with a plan, Jude observed as I carried my bag upstairs. I am. A very detailed plan. Want to talk about it? Not yet, but I might need some help with the physical fitness component. Jude raised an eyebrow. Physical fitness component? Helen is going to escalate this situation. When she does, I want to be ready for anything. That afternoon, while I worked out in Jude's gym, my phone buzzed with updates from the various seeds I'd planted around the city. Rhett's permit application had been flagged for additional review. His insurance company had opened an investigation into his claims history. The Better Business Bureau had received several anonymous complaints about his sales practices. More importantly, Helena's law firm was dealing with its own crisis. Someone had leaked information about the firm's holiday party, where several partners had made inappropriate comments about their female colleagues. The story was spreading through social media and legal industry publications, creating exactly the kind of scandal that made conservative family court judges skeptical of the firm's motives. I hadn't leaked the information, of course, but I'd known about the incident for months, and I'd made sure that the right people became aware of it at exactly the right time. My phone rang around 4 p.m. Helena's number. Tanner, we need to talk. I thought you had a restraining order against me. It hasn't been approved yet, and anyway, I'm calling you. What do you want, Helena? I want to end this. Whatever you're doing, whatever you're planning, let's just stop and work this out like adults. I'm not doing anything except defending myself against false allegations, but I'm willing to listen to your proposal. Come home. We'll sit down together, no attorneys, no outside interference, and figure out how to move forward. And Keaton? And Rhett? They won't be involved, just you and me. I considered the offer. Helena was probably hoping to get me back in the house where she could control the environment and possibly record our conversation for use in court. But she was also scared, which meant she was starting to realize how thoroughly I'd outmaneuvered her. I'll think about it, I said. But Helena, you should know that this isn't going to end the way you expect it to. What do you mean? I mean that 3 days ago you had a successful career, a comfortable home, and a husband who loved you despite your flaws. Today, you have legal problems, financial problems, and a reputation that's about to get much worse. Tomorrow you'll have even bigger problems. Are you threatening me? I'm educating you. There's a difference. I hung up and returned to my workout. Jude was holding the heavy bag while I worked on my combinations, each punch driven by months of accumulated frustration and carefully controlled anger. "You're hitting harder than usual," he observed. "I'm motivated. Just remember what I taught you about fighting. It's not about being the strongest or the fastest. It's about being smarter than your opponent." I remember. That evening, I implemented the next phase of my plan. Using my professional contacts in the cybersecurity industry, I arranged for a comprehensive audit of Helena's law firm's computer systems. The audit would be presented as a routine security assessment, but it would uncover several vulnerabilities that would require immediate attention. More importantly, it would reveal that someone had been accessing confidential client files from outside the firm's network. The access would be traced back to Helena's personal devices, which had been compromised when she used unsecured Wi-Fi at Rhett's hotel. The firm would be forced to report the potential data breach to their malpractice insurance carrier and to notify affected clients. Helena would be suspended pending a full investigation. Her career would survive eventually, but not before suffering significant damage. I also made arrangements for Keaton's spring semester. Using my connections at the university, I ensured that his unpaid tuition would result in immediate academic probation and loss of his dormitory housing. He would be forced to return home and face the consequences of his social media mockery. Finally, I scheduled a series of coincidental encounters that would bring Helena's situation to the attention of her social circle. Her yoga instructor would mention the financial difficulties to other clients. Her hairdresser would gossip about the restraining order application. Her favorite restaurant would have payment processing problems when she tried to use her credit cards. By the end of the week, Helena's carefully maintained image as a successful, sophisticated professional would be in ruins. Her friends would be whispering about her unstable marriage and her controlling husband. Her colleagues would be questioning her judgment and her ethics. And through it all, I would appear to be the victim, the patient, long-suffering husband who had endured years of disrespect before finally being forced to defend himself against false accusations. I fell asleep that night in Jude's spare room, listening to the sounds of the city outside and planning my next moves. Helena had started this war when she allowed her son to humiliate me in front of her family, but I was going to finish it. The empty chair at the Christmas table had been just the beginning. Before I was done, Helena would understand exactly what she had lost when she chose her ex-husband over the man who had loved her. But love was a luxury I could no longer afford. Now there was only the cold satisfaction of watching my enemies destroy themselves with their own arrogance and stupidity. Tomorrow would bring new opportunities to demonstrate that the quiet tech guy they'd dismissed was far more dangerous than any of them had imagined. Helena's restraining order hearing was scheduled for Thursday morning at the county courthouse. I arrived early with Maggie, both of us dressed conservatively and carrying thick folders of documentation. Helena and Lana were already there, huddled in conversation with a third attorney I didn't recognize. "Who's the new lawyer?" I asked Maggie. "Richard Bowman. He specializes in high-conflict family law. Expensive, aggressive, and not particularly ethical." Helena must be getting desperate. The hearing room was smaller than I'd expected, with fluorescent lighting that made everyone look tired and uncomfortable. Judge Patricia Williamson was a veteran of the family court system, known for her no-nonsense approach and her skepticism of frivolous applications. "Your Honor," Bowman began, "my client is seeking protection from a pattern of escalating abuse that began with financial coercion and has progressed to property destruction and cyberstalking." He presented Helena's case methodically, emphasizing the timing of the account freezes and the apparent sophistication of the social media attacks. Helena testified about feeling trapped and controlled by my manipulation of the family finances. "He changed everything overnight," she said, her voice trembling with what appeared to be genuine emotion. "I woke up, and our entire life had been restructured without my knowledge or consent." Keaton was called as a witness to describe the car vandalism and the threatening business card. He'd cleaned up his appearance for court, wearing a suit and speaking respectfully, but his testimony was essentially unchanged from his TikTok video. He was angry about the seating arrangement, Keaton explained. My mom tried to handle it diplomatically, but he stormed out and then took revenge on my father's car. When it was Maggie's turn, she systematically dismantled their case. Your Honor, the trust documents in question were established 3 years ago, before my client's marriage to the petitioner. They were properly filed, regularly maintained, and clearly disclosed during the couple's financial planning discussions. She presented bank records showing that Helena had been aware of the trust structure and had signed documents acknowledging its terms. She also provided expert testimony about the automatic triggers that had activated the restructuring. The petitioner's claim of financial abuse is contradicted by her own signatures on these documents, Maggie continued. She agreed to these arrangements when they benefited her, and now she's claiming abuse when they don't. Regarding the car vandalism, Maggie presented a detailed timeline showing that I'd been inside the house during the time period when the damage occurred. The security camera footage showed me waving at the camera, but it didn't show me damaging the vehicle. Your Honor, someone who was attempting to commit vandalism wouldn't deliberately position themselves in front of a security camera and wave at it. The footage actually supports my client's innocence, not his guilt. The social media posts were explained as the result of compromised accounts, with expert testimony about the vulnerability of devices connected to unsecured networks. Maggie presented evidence that Helena's phone had connected to hotel Wi-Fi on the morning the posts were made. Your Honor, my client is a cybersecurity professional. If he wanted to manipulate social media accounts, he would do it in a way that couldn't be traced back to him. These posts were clearly the work of someone with limited technical sophistication. Judge Williamson listened to both sides with the expression of someone who'd heard similar stories dozens of times before. When the testimony concluded, she asked a single question that cut to the heart of the matter. Ms. Jossman, did you or did you not sign documents acknowledging the trust structure that governs your family's finances? Helena hesitated. Yes, Your Honor, but I didn't understand. You're an attorney, Ms. Jossman. You're trained to read and understand legal documents. Are you claiming that you signed something without reading it? No, Your Honor. Then I fail to see how your husband's adherence to the terms you agreed to constitutes financial abuse. The judge denied the restraining order application and ordered Helena to pay my legal fees. She also issued a warning about filing frivolous claims and suggested that Helena might benefit from marriage counseling rather than litigation. Outside the courthouse, Helena was furious. This isn't over, Tanner, she said as we waited for our respective cars. You're right, I agreed. It's just getting started. That afternoon, the next phase of my plan activated automatically. Helena returned to her law firm to find that the cybersecurity audit had revealed serious vulnerabilities in their systems. Her personal devices were identified as the source of unauthorized access to client files, and she was immediately suspended pending investigation. Keaton received notice that his spring semester enrollment had been canceled due to unpaid tuition. When he called the financial aid office, he was told that his family's recent financial irregularities had triggered a review of his aid eligibility. Rhett's permit application was officially denied, and his business was scheduled for a comprehensive inspection by multiple city departments. The local newspaper ran a small item about increased scrutiny of downtown businesses following customer complaints. But I wasn't finished. That evening, I attended a community meeting at the local library, a monthly gathering where neighborhood residents discussed local issues and upcoming events. Helena had been a regular attendee for years, using these meetings to network and maintain her professional image. She was there that night, sitting with Lana and trying to project normalcy despite the day's setbacks. I sat in the back of the room and waited for the right moment. When the meeting opened for community announcements, I stood up. I'd like to address some rumors that have been circulating about my family, I said, my voice carrying clearly through the room. Helena went pale. She hadn't expected me to take our private conflict public. My wife recently filed for a restraining order against me, claiming financial abuse and threatening behavior. The court reviewed her allegations and found them to be without merit. I wanted the community to know that these false accusations were rejected by a family court judge after a full hearing. Murmurs rippled through the audience. Several people turned to look at Helena, who was trying to appear composed despite her obvious discomfort. I also want to address the vandalism that occurred at a family gathering last weekend. My wife's ex-husband's car was damaged, and there have been suggestions that I was responsible. I was not. The police investigation is ongoing, but I'm confident that the real perpetrator will be identified. This was technically true. The police hadn't actually opened an investigation, but they would if Rhett filed a formal complaint. And when they did, they would find that the security camera footage didn't actually show me damaging the car. Finally, I want to thank the community for your support during this difficult time. My wife and I are going through some challenges, but I'm committed to resolving them through proper legal channels rather than through gossip or social media attacks. I sat down to scattered applause. Helena looked like she wanted to respond, but Lana whispered something in her ear that made her stay seated. After the meeting, several neighbors approached me to offer support. They'd seen Helena's social media posts and had been concerned about the implications. My calm, reasonable presentation had positioned me as the victim of a vindictive wife rather than an abusive husband. "I always thought Helena was a bit cold," said Mrs. Patterson, an elderly woman who lived 2 streets over. "You seem like such a nice man. I hope you work things out." "Thank you," I replied. "I'm trying to handle this with dignity." By the time I left the library, Helena's reputation in the neighborhood had shifted significantly. Instead of being seen as an abuse victim seeking protection, she was now viewed as a manipulative woman who'd tried to use the legal system to punish her husband for standing up to her. The next morning brought fresh complications for Helena and her allies. Rhett's insurance company had completed their investigation and was demanding repayment of several claims they now considered fraudulent. His business accounts were frozen pending resolution of the matter. Keaton's college had also completed their review and determined that his social media posts about family dysfunction indicated an unstable home environment that made him ineligible for certain types of financial aid. He would need to find alternative funding sources or transfer to a less expensive school. Helena's law firm was dealing with their own crisis as clients began demanding explanations about the data breach. Several major corporate clients were threatening to take their business elsewhere, and the firm's malpractice insurance carrier was conducting their own investigation. But the most significant development came from an unexpected source: Gloria Marin, Helena's mother. She called me directly, bypassing Helena entirely. "Tanner, we need to talk," she said without preamble. "Hello, Gloria. How are you handling the holidays?" "Don't be cute with me, young man. I know what you're doing and I want it to stop." "I'm not sure what you mean." "I mean the systematic destruction of my daughter's life. The financial games, the legal harassment, the public humiliation. It needs to end." I was quiet for a moment, considering my response. Gloria Marin was the real power in Helena's family, the source of their social connections and much of their financial security. If I could neutralize her support for Helena, the war would be essentially over. "Gloria, I've been married to your daughter for 3 years. In that time, I've been respectful, supportive, and generous with both my time and my money. Last weekend, she allowed her son to humiliate me in front of the entire family while her ex-husband took my place at the table. What exactly did you expect me to do?" "I expected you to behave like an adult." "I am behaving like an adult. I'm protecting my interests and defending my reputation against false accusations. If that's causing problems for Helena, perhaps she should have considered the consequences before she decided to publicly disrespect her husband. Keaton is just a boy. Keaton is 19 years old and perfectly capable of understanding the consequences of his actions. He chose to mock me on social media for the entertainment of his followers. Now he gets to experience what happens when you humiliate someone who has more resources than you do." Gloria was quiet for a long moment. "What do you want, Tanner?" "I want exactly what I've always wanted. Respect in my own home, acknowledgement of my place in Helena's life, and basic human courtesy from her family. Unfortunately, it appears to be too late for that." "It's not too late. We can fix this." "Can we?" Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like Helena has made her choice. She chose her ex-husband over her current husband. She chose her son's entertainment over her marriage. She chose to fight me in court rather than treating me with basic respect. She's scared, Tanner. You've taken away everything that made her feel secure. I've taken away things that were never hers to begin with. The money was mine, the house was mine, the business relationships were mine. Helena benefited from those things because I loved her and wanted to share my life with her. But love is a two-way street, Gloria, and Helena stopped traveling in my direction a long time ago. So what happens now? Now Helena gets to learn what her life looks like without my support. No shared finances, no business connections, no social protection, just her own resources and her own reputation. And if she apologizes? If she makes this right? I considered the question seriously. 3 days ago, an apology might have been enough. A genuine acknowledgement of wrongdoing, a commitment to change, and a willingness to rebuild trust might have saved our marriage. But too much had happened since then. Helena had shown me who she really was when she thought she had the upper hand. She'd revealed her true feelings about our marriage and her willingness to destroy me when it served her purposes. Gloria, some things can't be fixed with apologies. Some betrayals are too fundamental to forgive. I see. And what about the family? What about the relationships you've built with all of us over the past 3 years? Those relationships were always conditional on Helena's approval. When she withdrew that approval, the relationships ended. I'm not interested in pretending otherwise. After I hung up, I realized that I'd crossed a line I couldn't uncross. For 3 years, I'd tried to fit into Helena's world, to earn acceptance from her family and friends. Now, I was actively working to destroy that world, and there would be no going back. But I felt no regret. The man who'd sat quietly at the end of the Christmas table was gone, replaced by someone harder and more calculating, someone who understood that respect couldn't be earned through kindness alone. That evening, I received a text from Helena. "Can we meet? Just the two of us. No lawyers, no games. I want to understand what you need from me." I stared at the message for a long time before responding. "It's too late for that conversation. Please, Tanner, I know I made mistakes. Let me try to fix this." "You didn't make mistakes, Helena. You made choices. Now you get to live with the consequences." I turned off my phone and went to bed. Tomorrow would bring new opportunities to demonstrate that the quiet tech guy they'd dismissed was far more dangerous than any of them had imagined. The empty chair at the Christmas table had been just the beginning. Before I was finished, Helena would understand exactly what she had lost when she chose her ex-husband over the man who had loved her. But love was a luxury I could no longer afford. Now there was only the cold satisfaction of watching my enemies destroy themselves with their own arrogance and stupidity. The community New Year's Eve celebration was held in Riverside Park, a sprawling green space in the heart of downtown that featured a bandstand, walking trails, and an amphitheater where local events were staged throughout the year. The city had organized a family-friendly festival with food vendors, live music, and fireworks at midnight. Helena would be there. She'd been helping to organize the event for months as part of her civic involvement strategy, and backing out now would damage her reputation even further. I'd also heard through my network that Rhett and Keaton would be attending as her guests, presenting a united front against the unstable husband who was making their lives difficult. It was the perfect opportunity for the final phase of my plan. I arrived early and spent some time reconnecting with people I'd met through Helena's social activities over the past 3 years. The conversation was illuminating. Most of them had heard about our marital problems through the community gossip network, and their sympathies were divided. "Helena's been through so much," said Janet Morrison, the wife of Helena's law firm partner. "First the problems at work, then the financial issues, and now this restraining order business. I feel terrible for her." "It's a difficult situation," I agreed diplomatically. "I'm hoping we can work things out." "She says you've been controlling the money and threatening her friends." "People say a lot of things when they're under stress. The court reviewed her allegations and didn't find them credible. I think that speaks for itself." Janet looked uncertain. She'd clearly expected me to be either more defensive or more apologetic. "Well, I hope you both find a way to move forward," she said finally. Similar conversations occurred throughout the afternoon. Helena's supporters were finding it difficult to maintain their narrative when I appeared calm, reasonable, and genuinely concerned about my wife's welfare. Meanwhile, my supporters, people who'd witnessed Helena's coldness or Keaton's disrespect over the years, were becoming more vocal about their belief that I was the victim of the situation. Around 6 p.m., Helena arrived with her entourage. Rhett was dressed in an expensive overcoat and leather gloves, playing the role of the successful businessman supporting his ex-wife through a difficult time. Keaton wore a college sweatshirt and maintained the sullen expression he'd perfected over the past week. Lana flanked Helena's other side, whispering constantly in her ear and shooting hostile glances in my direction. Helena herself looked tired and stressed. The past week had taken a visible toll. Her usually perfect hair was slightly disheveled, her makeup couldn't completely hide the dark circles under her eyes, and her smile seemed forced when she greeted other attendees. "Tanner," she said, when our paths inevitably crossed near the food vendors. "Helena, you look well." "Do I? I feel like I've been hit by a truck." "I'm sorry to hear that. The holidays can be stressful." She studied my face, searching for some sign of the man she'd married 3 years ago. "We need to talk." We tried talking. It didn't work out well for either of us. "Please, 5 minutes, just you and me." I glanced around at the crowd, calculating the optics of the situation. A public conversation would be witnessed by dozens of people, making it difficult for Helena to later claim that I'd threatened or intimidated her. "All right, 5 minutes." We walked to a quieter area near the amphitheater, far enough from the main crowd to have privacy, but still visible to anyone who might be watching. "Tanner, I know I hurt you," Helena began. "The thing with the chair, with Keaton's attitude, with bringing Rhett to Christmas dinner. I handled it all wrong." "Yes, you did. But this has gone too far. My career is in ruins, Keaton can't afford school, and Rhett's business is falling apart. You've destroyed all of us." "I haven't destroyed anyone, Helena. I simply stopped protecting you from the consequences of your own choices." "What do you mean?" "I mean that your law firm's cybersecurity problems existed long before I got involved. Keaton's financial aid issues are the result of his own poor judgment and your failure to plan properly. Rhett's business troubles stem from years of questionable practices that finally caught up with him." Helena's eyes widened. "You're saying you didn't cause any of this?" "I'm saying that I stopped using my resources and connections to shield you from problems that were already developing. When you decided that I wasn't worthy of basic respect, I decided that you weren't worthy of my protection." That's incredibly cruel. Is it?" "Helena, for 3 years I've been cleaning up messes that you and your family created. I've used my professional relationships to help Keaton with school problems, to help Rhett with business issues, to help your law firm with technical challenges. I did those things because I loved you and wanted your family to succeed. And now? Now I don't love you anymore. And without that motivation, I have no reason to continue solving problems that aren't mine." Helena was quiet for a long moment, processing the implications of what I'd said. So if I apologize, if I make things right between us, you'll help us fix these problems. Helena, you're still not understanding the situation. This isn't a negotiation. You can't apologize your way back into my good graces because I don't have good graces anymore. The man who loved you despite your flaws is gone. He died at your mother's Christmas table when your son told him to get out of his own chair. Then what do you want? I want you to understand what you've lost. I want you to experience life without the safety net I provided. I want you to learn that actions have consequences, even for beautiful, successful women who think they're untouchable. Helena's face hardened. You're enjoying this. I am, more than I expected to. You're sick, Tanner. This isn't normal behavior. You're right. Normal behavior would have been to file for divorce after the Christmas dinner incident and take half of everything in the settlement. Instead, I'm giving you the opportunity to experience the natural consequences of your choices while keeping my assets intact. You should probably thank me. Thank you? You've ruined my life. I've revealed your life. There's a difference. Helena stared at me with a mixture of fear and hatred that I found oddly satisfying. For 3 years, she'd looked at me with tolerance, mild affection, and occasional irritation, but she'd never really seen me as a threat or an equal. Now she was beginning to understand her mistake. This conversation is over, she said finally. Yes, it is. Enjoy the rest of the evening, Helena. The fireworks should be spectacular. She walked away without another word, rejoining Rhett and Keaton near the bandstand. I could see them huddling together, probably discussing what I'd said and planning their next move. But I wasn't finished with them yet. At 8 p.m., the evening's entertainment began with local musicians performing on the bandstand. The amphitheater filled with families and couples enjoying the music and the unseasonably warm weather. Helena and her group had claimed seats near the front, maintaining their public facade of unity and normalcy. I waited until the band took a break, then approached the event organizers. Excuse me, I'm Tanner Jossman. I helped sponsor the sound system for tonight's event. Oh yes, Mr. Jossman. Thank you so much for your contribution. I was wondering if I could make a brief announcement during the intermission, just a few words about community support and the importance of local events. Of course. We'd be honored to have you speak. When the band finished their set, the organizer introduced me to the crowd as one of our generous local sponsors. I walked onto the bandstand and adjusted the microphone, looking out at an audience of several hundred people. Helena was staring at me with growing alarm. She'd realized that I had access to a platform she couldn't control. Good evening, everyone, I began. Thank you for coming out tonight to celebrate the new year with your neighbors and friends. Polite applause rippled through the audience. I want to talk to you tonight about the importance of community and about how we support each other through difficult times. More applause, though Helena was now whispering urgently to Rhett. Many of you know that my wife and I have been going through some challenges recently. There have been rumors, accusations, and unfortunately, some attempts to use our legal system to resolve what should be private family matters. The crowd was paying closer attention now. Public drama was always more interesting than generic speeches about community spirit. I want to set the record straight about a few things. First, the restraining order that my wife filed against me was reviewed by a family court judge and rejected as frivolous. The court found no evidence of abuse, threats, or inappropriate behavior on my part. Helena stood up, but Rhett pulled her back down. Leaving now would only draw more attention to herself. Second, the financial difficulties that my family is experiencing are the result of legal structures that were established before my marriage and clearly disclosed to all parties. No one has been denied access to money that belonged to them. I paused, letting that sink in. Third, and most importantly, I want to address the question of respect in relationships. For 3 years, I've tried to be a supportive husband and stepfather. I've contributed to this community, supported local businesses, and tried to be a good neighbor. Last week, At a family Christmas gathering, I was publicly humiliated by my wife's son, who told me to get out of my own chair so that his father could sit there instead. My wife supported this humiliation, and her family laughed at my discomfort. The crowd was completely silent now. This was far more personal than anyone had expected. I want everyone here to understand something important. Respect is not negotiable. Kindness is not weakness, and patience has limits. I looked directly at Helena, who was now pale and shaking. Some of you may think I'm being vindictive or cruel in how I've responded to this situation. But I want you to consider what you would do if your spouse allowed your stepchild to publicly humiliate you while your spouse's ex-partner took your place at your own family table. Murmurs of understanding rippled through the audience. Several people nodded in agreement. I'm not asking for sympathy or support. I'm simply explaining why a man who spent 3 years trying to earn respect through kindness has decided to demand respect through strength instead. I stepped back from the microphone and walked off the bandstand to scattered applause. Some people looked uncomfortable with the public nature of my confession, but others seemed to appreciate my honesty about a situation they'd only heard through gossip. Helena was surrounded by concerned friends and family members, all of them asking questions and offering advice. But I noticed that several people who had been sympathetic to her earlier in the evening were now looking at her with skepticism. Rhett was angry, his face flushed with embarrassment at being called out publicly as the interloper who'd taken another man's place at the table. Keaton looked like he wanted to disappear entirely. But the evening wasn't over yet. At 10 p.m., I implemented the final phase of my plan. Using my phone, I activated a presentation I'd prepared weeks ago and uploaded it to the event's Wi-Fi network. Anyone connected to the network would receive a notification about a special New Year's message with a link to view additional content. The content was a carefully edited compilation of evidence that told the complete story of Helena's betrayal. Screenshots of her text messages with Rhett, planning the Christmas dinner humiliation. Copies of Keaton's social media posts mocking me for the entertainment of his followers. Financial records showing Helena's attempts to access money that didn't belong to her. Audio recordings of conversations where she and Lana discussed strategies for handling me. Everything was legal, properly obtained, and devastatingly effective. Within minutes, dozens of people at the event were viewing the presentation on their phones and sharing it with others. Helena's carefully constructed image as the victim of an abusive husband crumbled as people saw evidence of her manipulation and deception. "Oh my God," I heard someone say. "She was planning this whole thing. Look at these text messages. She's been lying about everything. That poor man, no wonder he finally snapped." Helena realized what was happening when people started staring at her and whispering. She grabbed Lana's phone and saw the presentation, her face going white with shock and rage. She stormed over to where I was standing with a group of neighbors who had been viewing the evidence. "How dare you?" she hissed. "This is private information." "Actually, it's not," I replied calmly. "Text messages between you and your ex-husband about humiliating your current husband aren't private. Social media posts mocking your stepfather aren't private. Financial records for accounts you tried to access illegally aren't private. You recorded our conversations. I installed a security system in our home to protect against burglars. The fact that it also recorded evidence of your infidelity and manipulation is just a bonus." Helena looked around at the crowd of people who were now watching our confrontation with fascination. Her reputation was collapsing in real time, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. "You've destroyed me," she said quietly. "No, Helena. I've revealed you. Everything in that presentation is true, documented, and verifiable. I didn't destroy your reputation. I simply stopped protecting it." Rhett stepped forward, his face red with anger. "You're a pathetic little man, Tanner. Helena deserves better than you." "You're absolutely right," I agreed. "She deserves exactly what she's getting." Rhett raised his hand as if to strike me, but I caught his wrist easily. 3 months of intensive training with Jude had left me in the best physical condition of my life, while Rhett's gym membership was clearly more for show than substance. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," I said quietly. "Assault charges would be the least of your problems right now." I released his wrist, and he stumbled backward, humiliated once again in front of the same crowd that had witnessed his Christmas dinner triumph. Keaton was recording everything on his phone, probably hoping to capture evidence of me threatening his father. Instead, he documented Rhett's attempted assault and my restrained response. "Still making TikTok videos, Keaton?" I asked. "This one should get great engagement." The young man lowered his phone, finally understanding that his social media obsession had contributed to his family's downfall. As midnight approached and the fireworks began, Helena and her allies retreated to the parking lot. Their public humiliation was complete, their reputations were in ruins, and their financial problems were just beginning. I stayed for the fireworks, enjoying the spectacular display and the congratulations of neighbors who appreciated my honesty about a situation that had been the subject of weeks of speculation. "You handled that with real class," said Tom Patterson, shaking my hand. "A lot of men would have lost their temper." "Anger is a luxury I can't afford," I replied, "but justice is something I can arrange." As the crowd dispersed and the new year officially began, I walked back to my car with the satisfaction of a job well done. Helena's world had collapsed completely, and she finally understood the consequences of underestimating the quiet tech guy who'd loved her despite her flaws. The empty chair at the Christmas table had been the beginning of her downfall. The public revelation of her betrayal had been the end of it. Everything in between had been the methodical destruction of a woman who'd confused kindness with weakness and patience with stupidity. I drove back to Jude's gym, where I would sleep peacefully for the first time in months. Tomorrow would bring new challenges as Helena and her allies tried to rebuild their lives without the safety net I'd provided for 3 years. But that was their problem now. I'd moved on to better things. The man who'd sat quietly at the end of the Christmas table was gone forever, replaced by someone harder, smarter, and infinitely more dangerous. Someone who understood that respect couldn't be earned through kindness alone, but could be demanded through strength and intelligence. Helena had taught me that lesson at her mother's dinner table. I'd simply been a better student than she'd expected.